Okay, here we go, y'all. Get that notebook, get that pen, get that paper. We're going to do a quick review here on greatest common factor and factoring by grouping. Let's go. Hey, y'all, how you doing today? So listen, we got some good stuff planned for you. So grab that notebook. We're going to run through finding the greatest common factor around polynomials leading up to the work that we're doing with trinomials. So we're going to do some GCF work, going to do some grouping. Let's just get into it. So check it out. Oh, let me get the light. All right, so let's check it out. So we're looking at these three different examples here. In this first one here, we got two terms. We're looking at what is the largest common factor that these two terms have, right? We look at our coefficients, we look at our variables, and we determine, hopefully you determine that for A, they have 4A as a common factor. And if I factor out 4A, what would I be? If I factor out 4A from this, what would I be left with? 2a squared minus 1, right? Because if I multiply 4a times this, I should get this. If I multiply 4a times this, I get that. All right, kind of coming back to you. All right, let's go through a few other examples. I'm going at a slower pace because hopefully you are either pausing the video or you're trying to figure it out along with me. What would you say would the common factor be here? Right, you look at the 12, you look at the 3, you look at the variables, right? I came up with 3b squared. If I factor that out, I'm left with 4b squared plus 1. Recognizing, right, in both of these cases, I can't reduce anymore. Here's a trinomial here. Take a look, see which ones you think would be the greatest common factor. Sorry about that, y'all. I live in New York City. All right, so let's just keep going. I say the greatest common factor here would be 5a and b squared, which leaves me with a 2a b 2a to the first b to the first plus 1 minus, because that's negative 15, 3b. You leave it as such. Okay, finding the GCF. Let's switch gears a little bit. So now we're still factoring, right? We're still trying to reduce these polynomials, these trinomials down to their lowest form. So here's another one. Let's take a look at two different ways or two different approaches. These particular problems are already kind of grouped together, but still we could put them down into a more concise form in the sense of two binomials. So looking at this, right, you'll notice some things. You'll notice that this quantity, right, because when they're in parentheses like that, that means that is one value. This quantity and this quantity are the same. So it's like 4x is times this and negative 3 is times that. So if this is the greatest common factor, what's left over is 4x minus 3. See the connection? See how we get there. And that makes sense because if I were to go the other way, right, doing the FOIL, I would be doing 4x times each of these, 4x times each of those terms. And I would have to do negative 3 times each one of these terms, negative 3 times each one of these terms. Take it down here. In the same vein, the same thought process that we did this up here, how would we factor this one? How would we group this one? Right? If I asked you what the GCF was of this, you should be able to tell me z plus 8, because remember, z plus 8, even though we don't know what z is, it is one value. And what's left? 8y minus 3. Okay. Almost there. Now, as far as the grouping exercise is concerned, I could give you something that looks like this. Where you actually get to group it yourself. You would group it yourself. And you would take it and turn it into something like this. So since we have 4 terms here, right, you choose which 2 terms to pair off together to find a GCF. So we can start to turn it into this. What do you mean? Well, I could look at these first 2 terms. Do they have something in common? Oh, they do. They have a y. So if I factor out that y, I'm left with x plus 4. This gives me a clue. Well, I remember in the problems that we just did, I had an x plus 4 on one side, and I had an x plus 4 somewhere else later in that problem. Well, if I also wanted to pull an x plus 4 out of this, what would be the GCF? Minus 3. And things should start to look a little more familiar. So that's how you take this and factor it down into this. Let's do another one. Remember, you're going to look at these polynomials that have 4 terms. Now, you don't have to do the ones that are right next to each other, right? You can mix and match any of these pairs. You just have to make sure that when you pair them up, you can find something that you can find a GCF out of that, right? So just for argument's sake, for teaching purposes, I'm going to go and do these 2. I'm going to use these 2. So if I'm looking at these 2, I'm looking for a GCF here. What would you say that is? I came up with 6x. Hopefully you came up with 6x too, friends. And you got 2y left here plus 3. Well, look at that. I already got a 2y plus 3, which means this has a 1 is just factored out, right? Because it's just the same thing. And here is my final answer. Let's do one more for the road. Where are we at? Okay, one more for the road, and then we're finished. Last one. This is a great problem right here. This one's great because, look, I'm not going to pair 2 that don't have anything in common. Why would I pair these 2 together and try and find a greatest common factor? This is a negative 2a minus a 9b. There's nothing there for me, right? Why would I pair negative 2a and 3? Like, yeah, but there's nothing there. I want to actually try and get something out of that. That was the point that I was getting at with the last problem. But let's just try these 2 here. What could be the greatest? What could be the GCF here? 2a, you left with a 3b minus 1. Okay, so I know I want a 3b minus 1 over here. That means what would be the GCF in order to make this true? Minus 3. And then there you go. And that, friends, is how you factor a polynomial by grouping, right? Incorporating the GCF idea and the grouping method to get us here. All right, so that's what we're looking for. Give it a shot. Let me know how it goes. And as always, reach out. I'm always here to help. Take care, friends.